Hey guys, my name is Kublai and today I wanted to talk about internet politics. Now, a little bit of a background information about myself is that I used to be pretty active on Twitter, on Facebook, and so forth. I used to have like more than 20,000 followers on Facebook, and it used to have like a very active community, right? And there were a lot of pros to it that, helped me in my personal life as well. But the thing is that internet politics is mostly a fucking brain rot, waste of time, and especially in these, in 2025, in this within this decade, you should try to minimize it as much as possible. You can still get benefits from internet discussions and discourse, but for the most part, it's a waste of time, and I will try to explain to you why. First of all, a lot of people tend to use like politics as some kind of outlet or rather as a distraction from their personal life. Basically, a little bit of a boredom. Some people just engage in it as a hobby. Some others just overdose on it as a drug. But to give you a very quick brief overview is that 90% of the people that are actually into politics and are discussing politics, they basically see themselves as clowns, right? So they don't really give a shit what is going to happen. They basically look at the environment, look at the arena, and determine their political stance based on that. And you guys do not know within Turkey, like within a Turkish context, how many people that are, like I still have like a very good friend who is like a diehard Kemalist, and I always try to convince him otherwise. And the funny thing is that he once went on a business trip to Dubai. No, I don't really like Dubai, but he really had the time of his life there. He got like a lot of attention from the ladies. He was like surprised how clean it is, how safe it is, how much wealth there is. And he started ironically joking about like maybe we should, try to get Sharia to Turkey, right? And he is just one example. I know another example of like a person who is like an actual, homosexual, and he just votes like royally for Erdogan. And the reason why he votes royally for Erdogan is basically because he just enjoys like the high trust Muslim environments over the, just the more secular environments. So that's another reason. Then we also have like crypto seculars slash crypto Islamists. Like a lot of people within the Islamic community are basically atheists, but like you will, in Turkey, it exists, right? Like a lot of imams are basically atheists, but they just, continue to do their job because, it's their job, like otherwise they're jobless. In the same manner, you have a lot of people within the secular community that are actually like very sympathetic to Islam, or they might even be like advocating, or believe that a theocracy is like the ideal solution for Turkey, but they will never, exclaim it very publicly, right? Like they will try to uh, dampen it up, try to mask it a bit. So the thing that I'm trying to say is that a lot of people within Turkey, within a Turkish context, uh, they basically determine their views on their environment and what helps them cope with life, what is practically beneficial. And I think that's a very good thing, actually. What's the issue then? The issue is that some people tend to take this way too seriously. And one thing that I can tell you about people who take this political stuff way too seriously is that it becomes like a drug, like a lot of people, they try to make up within their personal lives by being extremely radical. And sure, some people can pull it off. Some people have the luxury to be radical and ideological, but most people do not have that luxury, right? Like if you go ahead and start fighting with everybody on the street, discussing politics with family members and stuff like that, you will, first of all, you will ruin your friendships. Second of all, people will not want to interact with you. And third of all, you will just, like, there's this rule in 48 Laws of Power that even if you win a discussion, most of the time you are just going to piss off the other person, right? So it's just like the opportunity cost is not there. not to mention that, and maybe you can accuse me of this as well, but imagine a person who engages in like extremely esoteric literature or politics or philosophy and stuff like that. Um, how great can his sex life be? You know, not to go like full black pill on you, but chances are that a lot of these people that engage in like these extremely deeply detailed discussions, there is a reason why they engage in like these detailed discussions, right? But the issue doesn't stop there, right? There are two major issues with this. The first thing is that a lot of young people, especially young people, because they are very impressionable, they assume that because they read like a lot of opinions on the internet, they think that, oh, wait, public sentiment is extremely changing. And you see this in Turkey as well, like a lot of street interviews. In the street interviews, everybody is like, shitting on Erdogan and so forth. But like, sure, maybe it might be like that. Like who knows? Like who knows how reliable the polls are, how reliable those street interviews are. But the thing is that all of these things are just selection bias and confirmation bias, and the internet gives you a very false sense of what actually lives within a society. Sometimes it's useful, I will admit that, but you also always have to understand that a lot of people that go on the internet to complain, or people that are actually rich, happy, and so forth. They don't really spend too much time on the internet. Like they can basically travel the world. Like who the fuck cares, right? And the second issue is that public sentiment is extremely overrated. One of the issues in Turkey, for example, is this issue that, a lot of Turks might agree that geography is destiny, but I would say also like demography is destiny. And 10, 20 years ago, a lot of people started to notice something like the demographic trends in Turkey. Even like religious reactionaries, they were like always like attacking like seculars, saying like your family unit is under attack, your family unit will collapse, and so forth. And you were kind of right. If secular nationalists had listened to religious reactionaries back then, they would have a much more intact birth rate and preserve their republican institutions more even. But the thing is that a lot of issues within the world are driven by material, are a product of material realities, right? So what do I mean by this? How did westernization start? Like westernization started in Turkey because we understood, like the Ottomans understood, that we are falling back militarily, economically, and so forth. So we kind of have to westernize, right? And thus we started importing Western ideals, Western laws, and so forth. But similarly, we can basically, you know, have this type of POV towards a lot of things within our political sphere. For example, a lot of secular nationalists tend to criticize JAPE. JAPE is seen as like the traditional secular nationalist party. Obviously, there are more, but they criticize JAPE for being like too pro Kurdish, which is like obvious, right? Like I'm just saying, like obviously they are going to be more pro Kurdish because a lot of the younger demographics in Turkey are Kurdish. The Kurdish population has risen in person. If you look at the size of the Kurdish population, it has grown, right, within Turkey. And they freak out about this. And I'm saying, like, listen, bro, like, demography is just destiny. Like, a lot of politicians, a lot of politics, a lot of culture are just like a result of the material reality, right? Another example might be when Imamoglu got arrested. All of my personal friends went to those protests in Istanbul to advocate for or protest for Imamoglu's release. And I said, like, obviously I understand, like, the charges are probably false and I don't want to just made up something. But, like politics, laws, in my opinion, these are all just man made bullshit. But there's only power, right? But they said something along the lines of, like, why don't you care about the democracy in Turkey? And I said to them, like, why should I care about democracy in Turkey? Like, why should I care about that? And they at first they didn't really realize what I was talking about. But the thing is that when we look at Southern European countries, and we see their democracies and demographics, what democracy basically means, and this is like extremely unsustainable because a lot of the old people, it basically means rule by the old, right? Rule by the masses, rule by the old, rather, I should say. Because what you have in Southern Europe is basically a lot of old people that will endlessly vote to, leverage their position at the expense of the yuan. And what happens is obviously that the yuan natives of their country, they try to move away because they don't want to, just pay much more social security for the old in taxes. But then the issue start, then they try to put a band-aid on the issue by importing endless migrants, right? But then that causes a lot of social issues as well. So when people say, like, when my friends who are quite young, in their 20s, are advocating for democracy in Turkey, and I get it, like they don't really care about democracy, but they protested for Imamoglu because they believe that Imamoglu is like a much better candidate against Erdogan. But aside from the fight between Imamoglu and Erdogan, the thing I wanted to say is that, like, listen, bro, I don't care about democracy. And the reason why I don't care about democracy is, again, because of demographic realities that makes democracy basically impossible, especially liberal democracy. And again, this is true not only for nationalism, but also for religion. Like, obviously, the internet has harmed traditional religions a lot within an Islamic context. Then you obviously have the ease of transport and travel that has damaged national nation states, or to believe in them at least, So a lot of technology, a lot of culture, and so forth, they're all just interconnected. And the thing that a lot of people need to understand, and I believe Rehab Room made a video about this as well, is that you kind of have to adapt to it. And a lot of people that engage in like politics scoping, they don't really understand this. Um, they just have like extremely ideological views, which are out of touch with their home situation. And the thing is that you have to ride the waves. You don't have to fight the waves. So I'm not really like a hardcore black pillar who thinks that all types of politics is basically just cope or jester maxing or this whole status maxing or something like that. I do believe that you can have political convictions, but you have to ride the waves. And if you try to fight the waves, okay, fine, you can do that. But there is a reason why they put old people in the trenches in Ukraine, right? Like the Ukrainian men that are 40 plus, they're usually in the most dangerous spots fighting Russia because if you're a young person, at least you have some potential. But a lot of young people that engage in this ideological radicalism, I feel like, listen, bro, you're just basically putting yourself in a very dangerous situation. And if you want to be extremely radical, at least I hope that that your family and parents are well connected and rich. Because there is a reason why the term champagne socialist exists, right? Because only socialists from rich families that were fed like with a silver spoon, they are allowed to be ideological, be radical, and so forth, because they have the luxury to make mistakes in their personal lives. You don't, and that's the strategy of a lot of young people, all of young normal people whose suffering, by the way, is completely real, right? Like they suffer in their personal lives, be it socially, financially, economically, and so forth. So they become very vulnerable to those political copes, and just like just like a cope is a drug, they become victims to those drug dealers as well, and that's a very dangerous, situation because yeah, eventually you are going to, you don't really see the effects of it in your early stages, but on the long term, like when you're 35 and you're 40, 45, and so forth, you start to realize the facts that, oh fuck, those political changes that I was hoping for didn't really happen, didn't really come to be. So what the fuck did I invest all my time in, right? So it's better to not focus too much on politics, focus on your actual life. And, you know, if your actual life is doing well, then you can basically evolve yourself into politics, but not the other way around, because that will be detrimental to your health.